Hi, everybody. Welcome. I'm so glad you guys could join us today for our next zoo classroom. My name's Nikki. I'm the Community Education Coordinator out here at the North Carolina Zoo. And part of my job is to create programs for libraries, which is what the program you guys will be doing. You're my guinea pigs today. So it's a new program that I just created for libraries for this summer. But before we get started, I got a couple ground rules. You guys are muted. Just because that way we don't want hundreds of people talking all at once and it'd be crazy. So you are muted for a reason. We will be asking you guys lots of questions and we want you guys to ask us questions. So when I ask you a question, please put your responses in the chat box. If you want to ask us questions, put those in the Q&A. Now, you guys ask lots of amazing questions and we would love to be able to get to all of them, but we can't because we'd be here till midnight. So I'll be answering some of those online, but we have a team of smart people that are kind of behind the scenes and they're helping us answer those questions too. So hopefully they'll be able to answer your questions for you too if I don't do it on air, but your questions will get answered. So thank you guys again for joining us. And like I said, I wrote this program for the library. So every summer, the libraries do, they have a summer reading theme because they're trying to get you guys out reading and keeping your brains active. And so they have different themes every year. And this year's theme was Imagine Your Story, all about fantasies and myths and all that stuff. And I'm thinking, well, I just did myths last year. I did different stories about stars. So what can I do? And then I'm like, well, my job is pretty much all about busting myths. So we always hear different stories like, oh, this animal, like owls can turn their heads all the way around and all these different myths that we hear out there. And that's part of our job. Leslie behind the camera, a lot of people out there answering your questions, is to bust those myths and give you the real information, the facts. But before we start, what is actually a myth? So what is a myth? What do you think a myth is? So tell me in that chat box what you think a myth is. And I'll be looking over. You see me looking over here. We have a computer.
Rena says
so we can see chat.
That's not true. Made up stories, Macy. Emma says not real, like a story. So yeah, most people are saying like that. So it's not real. A fictional story.
Kind of like a fictional story, right? So if you guys ever played the telephone game, I don't know if you guys ever played that. So you just kind of get in a circle and one person makes a sentence, kind of whispers a sentence in the person next to them ear, and then they have to pass it on to the next person, and then they go around the circle. And by the time that sentence comes back, it's completely different than when it started. So that to me is kind of what a myth is. So it's a story that's been passed down over the years and probably been, blown out of proportion, and it's kind of gotten a little bit false. So there's some truths in some of the myths, and then there's some of them is just not even, you're like, I have no idea where they came up with that. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to become Mythbusters today. Okay, so you guys are going to help me become Mythbusters. So when I'm going to tell you guys a myth, and then in the chat, you're going to put in if you think it's true or if you think it's busted. It's not true. Okay, so for each of our myths, I want you to type that in the chat box for me. Okay, you ready? We're gonna start with our first myth. Well, let me I got props behind me. I keep forgetting that. We're gonna start with our friends here, the bat.
Oh,
and there are so many myths about bats. We could do a whole program. Sorry, Wendy, we're not gonna do a whole program on bats today. And we could though, because there's so many myths about them. The first myth though is bats are blind. Okay, is that true or is it busted?
All right, we got quite a few busted, but also quite a few true.
True?
So a little
mix of both.
A little bit of both, yeah.
Okay, that's usually what I expect, absolutely. So this myth is actually, sorry guys, it is busted. Bats actually can see, and they can see pretty well. It may not be their best sense. What do you guys think their best sense is? So especially those bats that have to hunt insects or other animals and like that. What would be their best sense? What would they use to find food other than their eyes?
Nice. I have a lot of people saying hearing, and then even some saying echolocation.
Yes,
Good
nice
job.
job. Right, echolocation. So they're sending out sound waves, sending out noises that bounce off that object, and they hear that and it tells them how they find things in the dark. Absolutely. But they can still see. They can absolutely still see. And then Miss Beth, if you'll show our first picture, let's see if that comes up. There we go. And this special kind of bat is, of course, a fruit bat. And if you look at his eyes, they're huge, right? And because, I don't know about you guys, when's the last time you had to chase down a piece of fruit, right? Maybe if it rolled off the table, but you don't really have to chase down fruit. So they don't need to have echolocation. So they actually rely on their eyes, those big eyes, and their sense of smell too. So fruit bats are definitely a big exception. So definitely are not blind. So bats are definitely not blind, and that one is busted. All right, Miss Beth, come on back to me. I'll show you. This is a fruit bat skull. So you can kind of see. I don't know why my hands are so shaky today. Sorry. Back up. Okay. All right.
That's good.
Okay, good. That's what I have Leslie here for, to tell me how the good things look. All right. So yeah. So bats are not blind. Absolutely. All right. Our next myth. These critters have so many myths about them. All right. Well, I'm getting our friend out. I want you guys to tell me, can a cockroach survive a nuclear war? Okay. Tell me if that's true or if it's busted. Can a cockroach survive a nuclear war?
I'd say we definitely have a lot of true and busted, but it seems to be most of them are true.
Okay. Yep. So this is a big one.
Some are changing their minds. So.
All right. It's actually a little bit of both. So a nuclear explosion, that would be 100 million degrees Celsius. That would be like you sitting in the center of the sun. Nothing can survive that, guys. Nothing, not even our cockroaches can survive that amount of heat. But this is that but. So this is why it's kind of it's busted, but it's also a little bit true, because they may, if they're not in the zone where the bomb has gone off, what gets people after is the radiation. So
I think somebody said that. Yeah.
Nice. Yeah. So
some are saying they can survive radiation.
There you go. So they can survive. So our weak little human bodies, we can only survive about 1,000 radiation units before we would pass away. It would make us really, really sick. Cockroaches, 10,000 radiation. So 10 times the amount that we can. So crazy, right?
And I gotta
so that's why it's a little bit of
real quick for you. So if you are a teacher and you're having your students are having trouble to log in, they needed to register each and every person. We had sent that out in the reminder email of logging in today due to some extra safety requirements that we had to put on. You're very welcome.
All right. Some issues getting this guy out. All right, there we go.
Sorry.
No, that's good. Thank you. Leslie can see that information and help me out with it. All right. So these guys can survive up to 10,000 radiation units. No way, we could never do that. And that's actually because they're kind of their simple design. And we have a lot of cells in our body, and our cells are constantly changing and replicating and making new cells. Theirs are much like every day, daily. We're constantly, our cells are regrowing and renewing. Theirs are much slower. So they don't regenerate maybe about once a week or so. So it's that when a cell is regenerating, that's when it's really sensitive to that radiation. So that's why these guys can withstand way more radiation than we can. So that simple body and that kind of the slow metabolism and all that stuff on it. So what I have in my hand here is a giant cave cockroach.
Somebody asked, does radiation, do they have a unit name? Do you happen to know that off the top of your head?
I think just rads.
And then it was also, this one's also saying like kilogram of matter and stuff.
Yeah,
like
nice.
So a couple.
Yep, nice. All right, getting a little wiggly here. Hold still, sweetie. You got the good one last time. How'd that happen? I got the wiggly one.
We do have a question. It says, does this roach have a shell?
Oh, good
From Mary.
question. Nice, Mary. Thank you. So all roaches and a lot of our insects have what we call an exoskeleton, which is kind of like a shell. And I'm actually going to go, I love this thing. This is the best thing ever. Let's see if we can take a look at it. It's kind of hard to see on him because his wings are kind of covering it. Let me zoom out. Focus.
Let's see if I can get a little closer.
Let me see, there's his head. Gotta hold still there, buddy. Gotta get my thumb out of the way. So their wings is what you're looking at right here. Are these back right here? That's their wings. And then underneath, there's kind of their body that you can see. Do we still have that? Nope, that's not here. And so they have that exoskeleton, which is kind of like a hard outer shell. Absolutely. And so that leads us to our next myth, that cockroaches are all pests. That all cockroaches are pests. What do you guys think? Is that true or is that busted? What do you think?
All right, so while they're answering that, we did have a couple people that wanted to know what the largest cockroach species is.
Well, you're looking at them, guys.
Yeah.
So the giant cave cockroach is actually the largest species of cockroach, which is pretty cool. So you are looking at the largest species in the world. That's awesome. So what do we got? So we got some true. What do we got? Busted. All right, so all cockroaches are pests. Busted. You're right. Oh, I see some busted. That was someone with an explanation. That's really cool. Right, so there are over 4,000 different species of cockroaches, and only about 30 of them are actually pests. And by pests, I mean they invade your houses, they eat your food, they maybe spread diseases, that kind of thing. They become a kind of a nuisance. And very rarely are they actually pests. Most of them don't even come near your house. Like this guy, he's actually got a pretty important job. So he's a giant cave cockroach, which means he lives in caves in the Caribbean. So he's a Caribbean giant cave cockroach. It's a big word. And so his job is to keep the caves clean from the residents that are living there. And we talked about them earlier, right? So what animals are they cleaning up after that live in caves? What do you guys think?
Great job, everybody.
Bats, right. So they're basically, they're eating guano. Nice job. Or poop, bat poop. So that's their job, is they're actually eating the bat poop and they're cleaning it up and they're keeping the caves and that ecosystem nice and clean. And so they have a very important job. And that's what most cockroach species are doing. They're actually cleaning up the world. They're doing more good than harm. So we're going to bust that myth, right? So actually both the first one, they can survive a nuclear war, a little bit of both.
I do have a
pest species.
I have quite a few questions about cockroaches real quick.
Nice.
Wendy would like you to answer if it's a boy or girl.
That one I don't know. The boys and the girls look a lot alike in the giant cave cockroach world. The Madagascar, you guys probably met our Madagascar hissing cockroaches. Those are easy to tell. They have nice little horns on their heads and let us know. These guys, not quite so much. So they're harder to tell. I'm sure there's probably a way to do it. And it probably involves getting very personal with a cockroach. And I'm not going to do that. So, and if we see them lay eggs too, which is always a good hint to let you know if it's a boy or a girl.
All right. Nice. So another question we have is, what do they eat? And it has wings, so can it fly?
Yes. So we did that type of cockroach. You guys remember what they ate? I told you. What do they eat? You remember? It's kind of gross. They live in caves.
Great job, Arian. Poop.
Bat poop, right.
What about other cockroaches?
So a lot of cockroaches are eating dead plants and leaves and other animals and any of that. So they're kind of cleaning up the world. They're recyclers of the world. And that they do have wings, but they really don't fly. Not very well. So they're not really great flyers, which is why it's nice to have them because they don't really fly around. We don't have to worry about them really flying around too much. So good questions, guys. All right. Can I go on to my next myth?
Sure. I mean, I have other questions if you want.
But. I have lots of myths.
Yes.
We'll get you. We'll try to get some questions at the end. All right. Tell me, can owls turn their heads all the way around?
Oh, that's awesome because somebody actually asked that question. Where was it? Oh, I think it's gone now.
Let's see. Got some busted, some no busted, true. Little mix of everything. This is usually what I expect. Yeah, because we hear these stories so many times and we think they're true, but Okay, think about when you take the lid off a peanut butter jar, okay? If you turn it 360 degrees, what happens? The lid comes off, right? If an owl turned its head 360 degrees in a circle, its head would pop off. Kind of defeats the purpose. You kind of need your head, right? So they actually don't go 360 degrees. They don't go around in a full circle. They get pretty close though, guys. They do. So you guys, how far can you turn your head? Everybody keep your shoulders straight and then turn your head as far as you can go. That's all I can go. I can only do about 90 degrees. So this is your owl. So he can go, so as far as we can go, right? Owls can keep going. They can look over their back.
Yeah,
They can
Grayson
keep
has it on
going.
too.
And they can look over that shoulder. It's about 270 degrees.
Great job, Grayson.
So
That's the first one I saw, so some other people may have seen it,
Nice. Right, so 270 degrees they can turn. So not quite all the way around, but pretty close, right? That's pretty close. Well, that's because if you guys feel you have bones in your neck, does anybody know what those bones are called that you have in your neck? They're part of your spine. They're called, begins with a V. Everybody's got it. So there's
Vertebrae.
bone.
Great
Nice,
job,
right.
everybody.
Vertebrae.
Mary, Connor, Charles, Emily.
Nice.
Yeah, lots of people. Raina.
That's some smart group. All right, so right, so you have vertebrae in your neck. You have 7 in your neck. Our owl, 14. So twice as many bones in their neck. So that's why they can turn. But you guys can do something that they can't, right? So when somebody says something really annoying to you, you can roll your eyes, or you can see your neighbor without having to turn your head, right? So you can move your eyes. They can't, so that's why they need to turn their head much farther. All right, nice job. Okay, yeah. I'm gonna grab a drink of
So
water
great.
while
I had a great 2 questions. One had an observation, I'm
Yep.
guessing, from talking about how there's 7 vertebrae in humans and then 14 in owls. And Mariki says, then how tall is a giraffe's neck? Like how many vertebrae are in that, I guess.
Very good. Believe it or not, same number you have, which is pretty amazing. So we have 7 neck bones, so does a giraffe. Theirs are just way bigger. So theirs are about a foot, whereas ours are probably maybe an inch or so. Theirs are probably almost a foot long. So they have bigger vertebrae, but the same number. Pretty cool, huh?
And then I do have a question that says, do you know what the smallest owl is, from Samantha?
Oh yes, the elf owl. I get to work with elf owls. They're the cutest little things. They're literally about this big. But my favorite thing is we had to catch them up sometimes to give them their medicines or anything like that, and they would go huge, and they would try to look all scary and scary me off, and I'm just like, really? So yeah. So elf owl is very small, very very tiny. Found in the desert, in Sonoran Desert, in different areas. So like the living cactus. It's pretty cool. All right, you guys ready for our next myth? We're gonna do it anyways. So our next friends, I'm putting gloves on, I don't know if you guys noticed, just because we want to make sure we don't contaminate any animals or cross anything between us and our animal keepers too. So that's why I'm making sure to put gloves on before I handle any of our animals. So our next group of animals coming in are the millipedes. So the myth is millipedes have 1,000 legs. Okay, let me know, is that true or is that busted? The millipedes have 1,000 legs.
All right. Lots of busted. Yeah, still a couple of truths. It's hard because we hear these things all the time, right?
Yep,
I
absolutely.
mean, why would they be called a millipede?
Yep, because milli does mean 1,000, right? Absolutely. But this one actually is busted. Even though they're called millipedes, which means they have 1,000 legs, they very rarely get that much. I think the record holder of the most legs is about 750. So they usually run about 100 to 500 legs. All right, so I'm gonna let's see if we can get a close-up look at their legs.
All right, that means I gotta come closer too.
Yeah. That's gonna show it.
Somebody asked for what the smallest owl was again. That was an elf owl.
The elf owl, yep.
Do you know what the biggest owl is by any chance?
That is the Eurasian eagle owl.
Eurasian eagle owl. There you go.
Oh, there they are. That's a good one. Look at all those legs. I can barely walk on 2 feet. I don't know how they walk on hundreds. So we would be here all day trying to count all those legs, but there's definitely not 1,000 in there. Probably maybe 100 or so, but this is an African giant millipede, right? And then that leads to our next myth. Are millipedes venomous? Millipedes are venomous. What do you guys think? Is that true? Are millipedes venomous, or is that busted? Yeah.
Mostly busted. A couple true. Some
So-
are like, oh, maybe.
don't wanna Right, absolutely. You're right. A lot of people get millipedes and centipedes kind of mixed up. So millipedes are not venomous. They're pretty harmless. And by venomous, that means they are going to inject a poison into you. So, so they are not venomous. They are actually kind of like the cockroaches. They are cleaners of the world. So they are pooping out dirt, as we like to call it. So they're eating those dead plants and animals, and then they're pooping out soil and dirt back into the world so more plants can grow. So very important job. So they're not venomous because they don't need to hunt and kill dead plants, right?
Did you say how many legs a centipede has?
Ah, good question.
Yeah,
I did not. So centipedes, centi means 100. So they have a lot less. So that's how you tell the difference between a millipede and a centipede. So not venomous. Centipedes are venomous. They're carnivores. They eat other animals. They're hunters. Whereas these guys are not. And the way I tell it, you can tell the difference is millipedes have more legs. So let's go back under here. So I don't know if you guys noticed these body segments. So all of these lines on their back. Kind of hard to see. See all those lines right there? There we go. I love the antenna. Those are cool. So all those lines you see are called segments. And so for each segment on their body, there's actually 4 legs or 2 pairs of legs. In a centipede, for each segment, they only have 2 legs or 1 pair of legs. So that's another reason, another difference. So centipedes, I don't know what the top record is for centipedes or how many legs they have, but I can't imagine it's more than 50 or so. Depends on the largest, how big the centipede is. Like I said, these are African giant millipedes.
Are
And
they the largest species of millipede?
They are.
That was a question.
Yeah, they are the largest species. And they can get anywhere from like 6 inches to up to a foot long. So these guys, he's not quite full grown. He's got some growing to do, believe it or not. The other one I had was a little bit bigger than him, but he was ready to come out. He was climbing out of the box, so I figured I'd probably grab him. So awesome. So we busted a couple of myths there. We have another question?
Yeah, so you were talking about these kind of go together. You're talking about how they eat dead soil and they kind of make good poop. So Fortune 2 asked, so they're decomposers, question marks? And then Mary followed that up with, do worms help the soil, or worms help the soil? So then do millipedes also help the soil?
Absolutely. Worms and millipedes and cockroaches, they all kind of have that same job. They're kind of breaking down like dead and decaying plants, and then that goes in their body, and then they're literally pooping out nutrients back into the soil. So yeah, so absolutely. So good job. So decomposers or detritivores is another good word. Detritivore, when they're eating dead plants. Detritus is dead plants, basically a big science word for that. So yeah, good job, guys. I'm gonna put Millie back. Oops, sorry.
So while you're doing that, I'm going to answer a couple of questions. We had a bunch of people asking like how much it weighs. They are very, very light. We don't know how much it exactly weighs, but it would be a couple of grams or ounces.
Yeah, way less than.
Yeah, very, very easy to handle.
Yeah. Probably about, I don't know, maybe a quarter.
Yeah.
If you weighed a quarter, it's probably about how much you feel. But it feels really weird when they're walking. It feels almost like Velcro. All those legs kind of walk. If Velcro could walk, that's about what it would feel. So that's very interesting. All right. Next animal. Where'd you go? Here we go. The scary one. Let's see if anybody can guess what animal they think that is.
We got rat,
Good guess.
bat,
Okay.
crocodile, fox, snake, raccoons, opossums.
Ah,
Couple
nice.
of opossums, couple of crocodiles, wolf, snake, raccoon, mouse, a carnivore, a dog.
All right. Good
Those are
guesses.
most common guesses, yes.
You said opossum, you got it. So opossums, a lot of myths about opossum. So one of them is they hang from their tails. So true or busted? And they hang from their tails. True or busted? Oops, did the wrong way.
I'd say we're about 50-50, but leaning more towards true.
Okay. All right, Miss Beth, you'll show our next picture. All right. True-ish. It's one of those kind of true, but also kind of busted. So yes, that is an opossum hanging from its tail. That is actually a baby opossum hanging from its tail. So when they're young and they don't weigh as much, sure, they can hang from their tail for just a little bit, not for long periods of time. But once they start getting bigger and heavier, yeah, no. The tail, they cannot hang from
Tammy
their tail.
said yes. Yeah, you're right, Tammy. Those
Yeah.
can't. They're too heavy.
Right, they're way too heavy. What they do use that prehensile tail, that fancy science word, so I mean they can grab things. All right, Beth, you can come back to me. And my friend. Hi, Mr. Possum. So they use that tail as they get older so they don't hang from it. They use it actually because it's prehensile, which means it can wrap around and grab things. So they'll grab leaves and stuff and take it to their nest, or they'll wrap around a branch for balance so they don't fall off, or maybe for the babies to hang on to also. So it has a lot of uses, but not for hanging and sleeping. That was a big myth. So that is definitely busted, except for when they're young. So nothing ever wants to fit perfectly in any of these. So that's why they say myths. Sometimes there's a little bit of truth to some of them, and some of them there's just no. I don't know where they came up with that crazy stuff.
So Lily said she thought that they didn't have eyes.
Oh yeah, they do. Oh yeah, they're just not very big. They kind of have smallish eyes. Their eyesight is meh, not the greatest. But here's another myth for you: are opossums nuisances? Which means, are they pests? Do they, they spread diseases? They're dirty. They're just, they're gross. What do you guys think? What do you guys think? Is that true or is that busted?
Well, most people are saying busted. Although I will answer, somebody asked what the difference between a possum and opossum is, and that's a big thing close to my heart. So I will explain that.
That's why I have to say opossum.
Yeah, opossums. The Virginia opossum, like we have in the United States, is spelled with an O. It is opossum. And possums with no O live in like Australia, and they kind of look a little bit more like bush babies, I would say. Nice. But yeah, most people are saying, oh, they help.
Yay, yes.
Definitely busted.
Right, it is definitely busted because they do more good than harm. Pretty cool thing. So a lot of people think they carry diseases. Opossums very, 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 very rarely get rabies because their body temperature is so low that the virus can't live in the opossum. Their chemistry in their body they have a supercharged immune system so that they are actually immune to venomous snake bites. And scientists are actually studying that right now. So they're hoping that maybe because of the opossum, they're going to come up with a universal anti-venom, which means you can bit by any kind of venomous snake, you get this anti-venom and you should be good. They're working on that. And thanks to the opossum. But my favorite thing, eat ticks. 4,000 ticks a year, guys. Yay. So opossums are not nuisances. Opossums, sorry, are awesomes, right? So the opossums are awesomes. So yay, we'll bust those myths. All right, next one. I hear this one a lot. Can a turtle climb out of its shell? True or busted? You guys think? Seeing a lot of busted. Coming up. All right. Let's ask our next friend. Vanderbilt, can you come out of your shell?
A couple people saying true, a couple saying busted.
What are you getting into?
I say most people are saying busted, though. Yeah.
Yeah. Right.
Candace even says it's attached to its spine.
Nice job. Right. So Vanderbilt says it is busted because if you look at this thing, Oh my goodness, this is heavy. This is the shell of an alligator snapping turtle. And what do you guys see in the middle? What's running up the middle of that shell right there? You guys see?
Yeah, great use of the word carapace, Nicole.
Nice.
Spine, backbone.
Spine,
Great job,
backbone, right?
everybody.
And even ribs too.
Vertebrae, that works
Yep,
too. Yeah.
vertebrae, spine. And those are a part of his shell. So those spine and these ribs you see right here too, those are all a part of his shell. So a turtle's shell is a part of him. It's literally his back. And so as he grows, it grows with him. So he doesn't leave it and go get a new shell. Absolutely not.
So we have another question.
Yes.
So if it can't come out of its shell, then how can it lay eggs?
Oh, well, it does have a back end.
Some parts of it can.
Yes. So you can see, right. So some parts do stick out, like the head and the legs and the tail and that backside. So they're not pooping inside their shell. You know, that part sticks out. So they can still lay eggs, absolutely. But what's really cool, does anybody know what kind of turtle Vanderbilt is? He's our state, from those that live in North Carolina, he's our state reptile.
Yeah, Jeanette Joe they say box.
Yes.
Kelly says eastern box.
Nice,
So
nice.
Teja, or
Right.
Teja.
Nice job.
Yeah,
Eastern
good job,
box
everybody.
turtle, absolutely. So the eastern box turtle, absolutely. And why they're called a box turtle? Because, you know, Vanderbilt's been with us a long time. And so he's not really afraid of us. He's quite used to us. But if you found a box turtle in your backyard, this is probably what you would see. So they have a very special kind of bottom shell that actually has kind of like a hinge. So that way that can completely close up. They pull their legs, their head, and their tail inside, and it closes up like a tight box. And it completely protects them. And it keeps them nice and protected from lots of other animals. So hence the box turtle.
And a lot of people are saying I see them on the sides of the streets for sure. Yeah.
Absolutely. Right. Especially after it's rained a lot in the spring. I see a lot of them crossing the road. They have a pretty decent sized home range. So a lot of times they move around, especially if they're looking for food or a boyfriend or a girlfriend. So they'll cross the roads to get to another area. And you guys can help them out because unfortunately this is a tough shell, but it's not going to hold up against a car, unfortunately. So if you do see them on the side of the road or in the road, if it's safe, okay, I don't want anybody getting hurt doing it, but if it's safe, you can pick them up and get them out of the road. And what you do though, you need to keep that in mind. So if you came across a Vanderbilt and here's the side of the road, here's the other side of the road, and he's facing this direction, if you picked him up and then brought him back over here, what do you think would happen? He's just going to turn around.
Yeah, very good job. Go back, Heather.
He's
Lindsay, do it again.
Yeah, he's just going to turn around and go back because there's something over there that he wants.
Great job, everybody.
Right?
Brandon.
Food, his home, boyfriend, girlfriend, whatever it is. There's something over there he wants. So he's just going to turn around and go back. So always put him on the side of the road that he's facing. So I would have picked him up. If he was facing that way, I would have picked him up and put him over here and put him on that side. And that way he could go over and see whatever it is that he needed.
All right, I have some questions for you.
Yes.
Emerson would like to know what the turtle's name is.
His Vanderbilt is his name.
And then Crystal asked if turtles are born with their shells.
Yes, they are. Actually, that's a good question. Yeah, they're much smaller, obviously. Probably when they're first hatched, they're a little bit on the softish side. They're not, completely hard like that. So it takes a little bit of hardening. But yeah, they are absolutely born with their shells on. Ready for protection.
Another quick question. Yeah. They kind of go together. So Molly asked how old Vanderbilt is. And then Mary asked, and how long do turtles live?
Good question. So we're guessing Vanderbilt's around 20-ish years. But it's all just a guesstimate. So he came into our wildlife rehab center. So we have a hospital here. So if you find an injured wild animal, you can bring it in. They try to fix them up and put them back in the wild. So Vanderbilt came in because you might notice, I'm going to come in, see if you can see his face. He's got a little bit of a grumpy face. I'm a little grumpy boy. He's actually missing his upper, kind of his nose. So his upper beak. So he should actually have a beak that goes over more on his front of his face. And he's actually missing that. So we're not really sure what happened. I don't know. Car, animal, something got hold of it. And so it makes it hard for him to eat. So he came to that rehab center, what was it, 2006-ish, somewhere in there. I get him and Franklin confused sometimes. So with that injury, and because he can't chew his food up properly, so he can't be released back in the wild. So that's why we have him. And he's been with us for a long time. So that's what we're guessing, about 20 years, because he came in as an adult and we don't really know for sure. Some people say you can kind of count rings on them, but on each of those scoots you see right there, but that's a guesstimate too. I want to see if we can put that under the.
And actually,
shove everything
that goes with Angelina's question. Do the patterns on the turtles' backs vary?
They can, absolutely. And especially in the box turtle world, they can actually vary on their legs too. So I've seen box turtles have bright yellow heads, orange heads, and some just kind of a plain brown. Like that. So yeah, so they can vary, just like people, different colorations. It's awesome. All right, any other questions?
I've got more. Oh yes, we have.
Lots of questions.
We have tons of questions.
Well, we do have other animals, so we'll do one more, and then we'll let our team of smart people answer too.
This is a good question. It was in the chat. It said, is there a certain way you have to hold the turtle?
Oh, good question. So I definitely want to support him. So that's why I'm holding underneath him and making sure he's well supported. He likes to kind of move. Sometimes it looks like he's swimming a little bit and moving around, which is also another myth. So if you find a box turtle, please just don't chuck it into a pond. They are not built for swimming. They are a land turtle. Okay, so they can go to water and they can kind of wade in a little bit, but they can't really go into deep water. They're not built for swimming, but they'll go to water to drink, obviously, like a lot of animals. But yeah, so that is definitely a myth we'll bust right now. Did I answer that question? I totally got myself distracted.
Yes.
All right. I'm gonna put Mr. Vanderbilt away. Thank you.
All right, and
Vanderbilt.
why she's doing that? I'm gonna answer a couple of extra questions. So Antonia asked, how do you tell if it's a boy or girl?
Oh, good question. I can do that one.
Yeah,
too.
sure.
So,
Well, I didn't know if you needed to get ready with something else. So.
I think I'm good. All right. I don't know if I forgot to mention that when you looked at him, his eyes.
Great job, Charles Day. Yeah.
Right. So a lot of in the box turtle world, this is not all turtles. I forgot the other part of it. I just remember the other part of the question. Somebody asked how long turtles live. Box turtles can live in a perfect world up to 100 years. So they can actually, forgot what I was going to say. Turtle girl, thank you. Good Lord. So it's been one of those days. So yeah, so the color of the eyes. So the boys tend to have reddish eyes.
Yeah, great job, Jenny.
Girls more brownish, but I've also seen girls with kind of reddish eyes, and I've seen boys with kind of brownish eyes. So it's not 100%. What I look for is the bottom of the shell. So if you look in this shell in the bottom, there's actually a little kind of an indentation.
Which
right
great
there.
job, Jeanette. Knew that.
I don't know if you can see that. I see a little bit that way. So there's a little bit of an indentation. The boys have an indentation. The girls would have a flat shell. So that part would be completely flat. So that's definitely the key on that one. All right. All right, we're gonna move off from turtles, guys. We got some more myths. All right, this one I hear a lot, and I've heard over my many years working with birds. Parents of baby birds will reject them if you touch them.
That's awesome, because one of the first questions we got today was that.
So if Miss Beth, if you'll bring our next picture up, Lord. Yeah, it's been a long day.
Right,
sorry, guys.
A lot of busting.
These are baby birds. Those are my baby horn larks.
A lot of busted.
Nice, yeah. Right.
Some said, maybe.
Maybe, yeah.
Good.
That's that big myth out there. Absolutely. So, birds actually, very, very few birds have a sense of smell. So very few birds would never be able to smell your scent.
Yeah, great job, Candace.
So you would not be able to smell, the parent would not be able to smell if you found a baby bird and you picked it up, that's fine. The baby bird is fine, or it will be fine. The parents will find it, which is what you should do. So Beth, if you go to the next slide. So if you've ever find a baby bird out and about, you can actually help them. You can either take them to a wildlife rehab center. So if you find a baby bird that was the picture I just showed you recently without any like feathers, eyes are closed, they're super, super vulnerable. If they look healthy and they're not bleeding or anything like that, your best thing is to put them back in the nest if you can get to it. If not, make a nest and kind of hang it up somewhere where it's safe for them, absolutely. If it is injured, take it to a rehab center. If you find a bird on the ground that has feathers, full feathers, a baby bird that, he's got starting to get his adult feathers in, that's called a fledgling. And they actually jumped out of the nest on purpose because they're learning to fly. And chances are the adults are nearby. And so they're going to help that baby. And so basically just kind of leave it alone and just watch it. And if you don't see any parents coming near it after several hours of, staying away and watching it, then maybe you can try and get it and take it to the rehab center. So Beth, if you can go back to me.
So real quick,
yeah.
We had a question that says, but vultures smell.
They do. So that's one of the few. They're vultures, kiwis, and I'm drawing a blank on other species because, they do have a sense. Some, like I said, very few species of birds actually have a sense of smell. So that's a good one. Vultures are definitely one of them. So if you find a baby bird and you find the nest, if it's fallen on the ground, you can sacrifice a Tupperware or like a strawberry box or something that fruit comes in that's got a lot of the different holes and stuff in it. So it needs to have holes. You need to have drainage in there. And you can just put the nest in there and then kind of either hang it up somewhere and then put the baby bird back into it. And the adults will usually come back and just kind of watch it after a while. So you can actually help birds because they're not going to smell. They're not going to smell your scent on them. Okay.
A couple quick questions. Yeah. Lacey would like to know when baby birds learn to fly.
It depends on the bird species. They grow quick though. I mean, within a couple weeks, a lot of times birds are from that vulnerable, no feathers, just eyes closed to jumping out of the nest within a matter of a couple weeks. And then some species, it takes a little bit longer. It depends on the type of bird, but good question. Right.
And Caitlin said, aren't birds born blind?
Many of them are birds born blind. Some species are, not all, like your chickens and your ducks. A lot of them we call, their big fancy word is altricial and precocial, or the big words. So some of them, when they hatch out, their eyes are open, they're feathered, they have that fuzzy all those little fuzzy feathers on them, that down on them, and they're ready to follow mom and eating food and stuff like that. So some are born differently. They depend on their parents, they have no feathers. They need mom and dad to stay on them, keep them warm, and take care of them. And the other ones are already just about ready to go right from hatch. So it depends on the different species. So cool. So yes, we could talk about birds all day, guys, because I'm a huge bird nerd.
I was gonna say, Nikki would love to.
I know, I totally would sit here and talk about birds all day.
We'll have to have a bird program.
I know, absolutely. All right, so our next myth, guys. Baby venomous snakes are more dangerous than adult venomous snakes. True or busted? What do you guys think? I hear this one a lot. I always hear, oh my God, baby snakes are the worst. They're gonna hurt you the worst. What do you guys think? What are we thinking, Leslie?
It's still about half and half. I think maybe a little bit more true.
Okay, all right, that's good. That's right, that's what we're here for. That's my job. So, and there has been that thought for many, many years. Right? So, a venomous snake like this cottonmouth, when they're smaller, they're not as dangerous, to be honest, because they are smaller, which means there's not as much venom in their body. They're not making as much venom. So, I'm going to do a little sample here. Here we go. So, this is my baby snake, my adult snake. So, for every one unit of venom that a baby snake can put out, adults can put out about 10 more units. So they can put out more. So even though that baby snake, a lot of people hear that, oh, they can't control how much venom they put out, which is actually not true either. They're finding new researchers finding out that they actually can control it, believe it or not. So they're not putting out as much as an adult can. So that is kind of busted. And as adult snakes, venomous snakes get older, their venom, the effects of their venom is actually stronger. So adult snakes are actually more dangerous than a baby snake. So yeah, so baby venom. So busted, which is kind of cool and interesting. But luckily, none of the snakes actually want to bite you guys. So as long as you stay away, if you see it, just back away, leave it alone. They'll leave you alone. As most of the times when people get bit by snakes, it's either they're stepping on them accidentally, you always see them, or they're trying to kill them, or they're trying to hurt the snake, and that's usually when problems occur. So if you just leave that snake alone, it'll go away. But if if it's somewhere that your kids might get hurt, you can call people. There are professional people that will come and move that snake for you and move it to another area, not necessarily kill it. They have just as much of a purpose in the world as we do. So let's see. My next myth, I'll let you start answering that while I get our next friend out, is,
and everybody, we're having a little bit, it looks like our internet is being a little funky right now, so just bear with us. We're trying to make sure it works well.
Uh-oh. What's going on?
They can hear us.
Oh, okay. Just know they can't see my beautiful face? No.
I know that's so bad.
Shucks. I don't like seeing myself on camera, so I'm okay with that. All right. How is that going? We're still?
Yeah, keep going.
Okay. All right. So, next myth, guys, are snakes are slimy. So tell me, is that true or is that busted? Are snakes slimy? What do you guys think?
Lots of busted.
Nice.
Yeah, pretty much busted.
Yeah.
A couple are true, but everybody knows they're snakes.
All right. Hi, bud. Let me get my friend out. I don't know if he was sleeping or not. Hi, handsome. How are you? All right. Oops. I put stuff in my way. Not very smart to do. All right. We have, who do we have? Slinky?
Slinky.
Slinky. I remember what that is. So Slinky, here we go. He's going to come say, oh, he's coming to say hi.
Yeah,
oh.
Today, Grayson.
Nice job, Slinky. We trained him to do that, right? Yeah, right. So that is Slinky. And you know what? If you look at his scales, he looks like he is kind of wet because he's very shiny. So they have very shiny scales. You can kind of see that. So when the light hits him and reflects off it, it looks very shiny and it looks like he might be wet, but they're actually not. So the only time a snake is slimy is when they just come out of the water. So that's really the only time. They actually have very dry scales and they feel pretty smooth. And so if you guys have ever touched a snake, a lot of people have now these days, they're very smooth, and this is the hard part about doing this remotely like this, because normally I'd have you guys touch and feel for yourself and be able to feel how smooth and not slimy Slinky is.
So a lot of people are asking what type of snake.
All right.
You did say it though, so good job.
All right, so he is an eastern rat snake. Absolutely.
Yeah,
so
he's
he's
a black rat snake.
Yeah. Yeah. So we call them eastern rat snakes. We used to call them black rat snakes, but there's different color phases, so they're not always black. So that's why they started just go to eastern rat snake to make it a little more common. So yeah, so he is an eastern rat snake, one of the most common snakes we have here in North Carolina. And do you think they're venomous or not venomous? What do you guys think? You guys know I'm smart, right?
Yeah, everybody's saying no.
Right. I would not be holding a venomous snake like this. I'm much smarter than that. I'm smarter than I look, guys. So yeah, so they are not venomous. They're completely harmless, unless you're a rat or a mouse, of course, which none of you are, right? So they're pretty awesome. Let's put him. I like to put this microscope thing is just an awesome thing. So actually, hang on, Mr. Slink. Put this back under. So, excuse me. So Slinky has very smooth scales, but there are some snakes like this guy. This is a rattlesnake. Has what we call keeled scales. So theirs have like an extra ridge on the top of each of those their scales, And so they're not quite as smooth as Slinky would be. And so they're called a keeled scale. So they have kind of, to me, they feel like sunflower seeds when you touch them. So they're kind of that rough, kind of a little bit texture on them. So they're pretty good. Do we have any questions about snakes? I'm sure we do. There's always a bunch of questions about snakes.
Yeah, there's plenty of questions. My Q&A is kind of not doing really well, so I'm asking the other panelists if they can put stuff in. So
Okay.
we got asked if it was poisonous. We
Okay,
got asked what is the longest snake
in the world?
Or yeah, I would
North
say
Carolina?
the world.
In the world, that is the reticulated python. I think it maxed out. The largest recorded one was about 32 feet. So get a measuring tape out and see how long 32 feet is. It's a big snake.
All right. We got the chapter. I mean, the
Go.
Q&A to work. Okay,
Right,
so we got, we answered if he was venomous. So no, he is not.
Nope.
Beatrice would like to know, why do snakes stick their tongues out?
Oh, good question. Let's see if you guys can answer that. You guys are pretty smart. Why is he being rude and sticking his tongue out at you? You guys, what's he doing with that tongue? There we go. I see it.
Yeah,
They're
great job, everybody.
Smelling, right?
Wow.
So he's sticking that forked tongue out, and it's collecting odor particles that are in the air, and they're collecting on his tongue, and then he brings it in, and at the roof of his mouth, he's got an organ called the Jacobson's organ, and it kind of helps him to figure out what he's kind of smelling or tasting, that kind of thing. So tasting and smelling kind of go hand in hand. So yeah, so he is smelling with that tongue. Good question. And not only is he smelling, but the reason it's forked, he's smelling in direction. So if more mouse odor particles, let's say that the mouse is over in this direction, okay, and those mouse odor particles are collecting to this side of his tongue, he's gonna know he needs to go in that direction, right? So pretty cool. So smell-o-vision or smelling in stereo.
That's a really great question. I'm gonna go back to that. A bunch of people want to know what the world's most venomous snake is. Do you know? Or I do know.
It depends on what you're. I've heard sea snake. It depends. Depends on the most toxic venom. I think is from the sea snake. There's a type of sea snake. Do you know?
So the most scientists have said the most toxic venom is from the inland taipan, which is a snake that almost nobody sees.
I know.
So
that's the
never
thing
even
because
bit anybody.
I know that's the thing. It's hard because some snakes bite a lot of people and sometimes they, they die. So those technically the most dangerous snakes, or
so,
the ones that
dangerous
yeah.
would then be your black mama because it's soft.
Yeah. Good. All right. Well, I'm going to put him away while and Miss Lovely can answer some questions.
Sure. We had a question from Allison about, do they use camouflage? And the answer is yes, they do. They have different snakes have different kind of markings and such, and it definitely helps with camouflage. That's one of the reasons that copperheads are so hard to see, because they have really great camouflage. Let's see what other.
Oh, and then Slinky here, he's kind of not full black. So when he was younger, he's got a lot of markings and stuff on him to help them to camouflage.
Oh, and this is the question I really want to answer. So Aiden asked, what are some signs to know if you are bothering a snake?
Well, a lot of times they warn you. So even if they don't have a rattle, like the rat snake, it's pretty cool. So if he wants to scare you off, he will actually shake his tail. And if he's in some leaves, it sounds like a rattle. So he's warning you off. Sometimes they coil, sometimes they hiss. They just, or whatever noise, anything they can do to warn you. Because the last resort, guys, is to bite you. They don't want to bite you. You're not food. They know you're not food. You're way too big and scary. So their last resort is to bite you. So yeah, so they will warn you any way they can, either, making whatever noises they can make with the tail, or hissing, anything like that. So, all right, good questions, guys. All right, my last myth, guys, comes to the biggest, one of the biggest land animals. Elephants never forget. That's my myth. Is that true or busted? What do you guys think? Elephants never forget. True, busted, true, busted, true, busted, true.
Mostly true, I would say. Mostly true. A couple of busted. I love it when people answer, they're like, true question mark? That's how I answer.
All right, it is true. Elephants have amazing memories. There's an elephant, if an elephant leaves its group and goes on to another group, even after 20 years have passed, they will actually be able to remember and recognize that elephant, and they get excited and they see each other. So they remember family members, even 20, 30 years later. Pretty cool. But, okay, elephants are big, right? You learned that. They're huge, and they eat a lot. So they're eating up to 200 pounds of food a day, which means they have to find all that food. So they walk a lot. And so they have huge home ranges. So they have big areas that they have to go walk around to find food. Some of those are about the size of Rhode Island, a whole state. And they have to remember, they have a map in their brain of where everything is. And they remember that huge size of Rhode Island. They can remember that map and where they are, where they need to go. Oh, I remember last year the grass was growing really great over in this part. Oh, up here in this time of year, it's growing really fantastic up in this part. So yeah, so they remember that. So yes, it's definitely true. Elephants have a very good memory. Excellent. Which does, unfortunately, so as elephants are walking around and they're looking for their food, trying to eat food, trying to survive, and they're come across a field of plants. A farmer has planted all these beautiful crops. And the elephants are like, oh, yes, it's the Golden Corral. Yeah, they go running in, it's a big buffet, and of course they're gonna eat it. Because yeah, it's free food. It's a lot of great things. Do you think farmers like that? Yeah, probably not. Not so much. So those elephants are actually kind of eating their livelihood. So it's food that they might have to eat and feed their family. It's food that they might be selling so they can buy food to feed their family. So it's very important to them. So a lot of people in Africa see elephants kind of like we see, I don't know, rats or mice that get in our house and eat our food, that kind of thing. So kind of as pests. And so there's been some conflicts. So a lot of times the farmers want to keep the elephants out of their fields, and then the elephants don't want to leave because it's free food, absolutely. So there have been, unfortunately, some deaths on both sides. And the zoo actually has been helping out for many years on how to kind of break that conflict. So we have been sending vets over for several decades now, and they are tracking elephants. And because they want to see how they move in that home range, that Rhode Island size area. They want to know what time of year, where they are certain times of the year. And so they started putting big collars on them. So Miss Beth, if you could show us our picture, our last picture. Let's see, there it is. So that is Dr. Loomis. He was a retired now, but he has been going over there for decades, and he kind of started that program. And they put this huge collar on the elephants, and it's a tracking collar, and that way they can track where that elephant is moving. And they put it on a very special elephant. I don't know if you guys know this, but in elephant worlds, the girls rule. So they put it on the head female, the matriarch, they call her. And that way where she goes, everybody else follows. So that way they don't have to collar multiple elephants. So they just collar her. And that way they can track where that herd is moving. All right, Beth, you can bring it back to me. So that way they track them, and they can tell the farmers, hey, this time of year, the elephants are up here. So go ahead and plant your crops down here. And by the time you're ready to harvest them, the elephants will have come down, you'll have harvested your crops, and then you can plant up here where the elephants are not, right? And so since they've been giving that information out to farmers, there's been zero conflict between elephants and farmers now. So and that was in Cameroon, and I think they're starting doing it in the Ivory Coast now, Côte d'Ivoire, or however the French way you say it. So yeah, so that is actually how the zoo is helping elephants, because we want to help elephants because they're what we call a keystone species. And so they will tell us, they actually help other animals out there. So we want to help them out. And I totally forgot to print off my pledges.
They're on the website.
Oh, perfect. Thank you. So you can go to our website and you can take a pledge to help elephants, guys. So we want to help zoos helping elephants, and there's different ways that you guys can do it. So you can help elephants out in many different ways. You can have them coming to the zoo. When the zoo is open, come to the zoo. Part of our admission tickets goes to conservation work. So that elephant tracking that we're doing, a lot of different things that we're doing to help animals in Africa. So that helps elephants in Africa there. So you can, there's a cool website. If you go to 96elephants.org, there's an ivory pledge. So you can pledge to never buy ivory or, and you know, anything like that. All the cool stuff you guys learn about elephants or that you can go and research and learn yourself, learn about it, and then share and tell other people, make them aware. It's a lot of cool things that you guys can do to help elephants out. So you can, there are coloring pages, so you can print those out and you can color and take your pledge and how you're going to help elephants out. All right, guys, thank you so much for joining us today. I appreciate you coming and helping me bust some myths. So I hope you learned a few things, and I will, hopefully we'll see you next time. What are we doing next week? I forgot.
Senses.
Senses, magnificences. So join us next Thursday at 1, and we're going to learn about animal senses. All right, guys, take care.